The boss has been taken down. His men are either locked up or on the run. One last thing remains, stripping him of his crown. But who were these thieves? How did the Soviet Union hunt them down? And why were they so feared? And what was this mysterious ceremony called decrowning? Why were some thieves stripped of their crowns? Welcome to our channel. And today, we will answer all of these questions. In the Soviet Union, thieves enjoyed fear and respect. These were men who had earned the right to be called thieves-in-law. No ordinary people could do that. They were the most important people in the criminal world. They lived by their own laws. That is why it was considered a great honor to become a thief-in-law. But there were also punishments for breaking the law. In the criminal world, the main one was decrowning. That is, depriving a thief of his title. To be decrowned was worse than a long prison sentence for a thief. It was a terrible shame. This title determined the status of a person in society. How did a thief get this status? After all, the police couldn't just arrest someone for being a thief. After all, it was difficult to prove. Thieves avoided banks and other obvious places. They preferred to steal cars, apartments, valuables from private individuals, bribery and speculation. The thief had to earn respect among his peers. He had to be stronger than the rest. Only then would the title of thief be assigned to him. It happened back in the days of Stalin. He established the criminal code in the Soviet Union. But the fact that criminals can judge other criminals is absurd. The police didn't do this. Until 1953, the thieves themselves decided who was worthy of the title of thief-in-law. Of course, such a decision was made by a gathering of thieves. But what if a thief-in-law committed a crime that did not meet the expectations of society? For example, he betrayed his friend or stole from another thief. He would be subjected to the procedure called decrowning. Such a thief would no longer be respected. He would be persona non grata in the criminal world. No one would protect him. All thieves could now become his enemies. During decrowning, the thief lost his title. He was no longer considered part of the criminal world. Everything he owned went to the winners of the decrowning. This was the law of the underworld. But when it came to carrying out this law, there were problems. After all, it was almost impossible to find a thief in the city. They knew the city like the back of their hand. They knew every policeman and could anticipate his actions. The thief could easily slip through the cop's fingers and disappear. The thief could not be extradited from one country to another. International treaties prohibited it. Even when a wanted thief was caught, the process of extradition took years. And during this time, the criminal managed to escape again. Criminals did not keep documents and did not contact relatives. They moved from city to city, always remaining one step ahead of the cops, so finding a thief and bringing him to justice was extremely difficult. During the Great Purge, Stalin ordered all thieves and bandits to be shot. This was the only way to deal with them. Some criminals agreed to cooperate with the police and received immunity. Others were deported to the Gulag. Still, some managed to hide. But in the late 40s and early 50s, arrests of criminals began again. Many of them were exiled to the Gulag. As soon as the prisoners were released, they returned to their former ways. However, the Soviet government wanted to put an end to the thieves. A real war began. The methods of fighting criminals have changed. It was decided to destroy the thieves-in-law. First, the Soviet government deprived them of their main privilege, the opportunity to make money. The thieves were placed under surveillance and followed everywhere. If the thief was spotted, the police immediately detained him and confiscated everything he had. Soon enough, thieves began to avoid crowded places. Police presence was too high. The streets were unsafe. At the same time, the government set up special informers. They were ordinary citizens who secretly collected information about the crimes and the criminals themselves. When they learned of the thieves' whereabouts, they immediately informed the police. Thieves could no longer live freely among people. They were forced to move to the suburbs and villages. But even there, the government kept track of them. If the police had exact information about the location of a thief-in-law, they carried out a special operation. The apartment was surrounded and the thief was arrested. It wasn't easy. Criminals resisted arrest. Many of them were armed. Sometimes there were real battles on the streets. Once the thief was arrested, he was put on trial. The trials were closed. Witnesses were not allowed to attend. The state prosecutor presented irrefutable evidence. There was nothing left to do but convict the thief. Sentencing was severe. No criminal in the Soviet Union ever received less than 10 years in prison. The thief-in-law was deprived of his title and sentenced to hard labor in the Gulag. Some of the thieves were charged with anti-Soviet agitation and spent several years in a psychiatric hospital. Those convicted of serious crimes, such as murder, were usually sentenced to 25 years in prison or more. Most thieves-in-law were eventually released. However, they were no longer the same. Years of hard physical work had changed them. They were no longer respected. They could not return to their previous lives. That was the first stage of decrowning. But there were other, more severe stages. What was the purpose of decrowning? The word decrowning literally means to take away the crown. In fact, it meant taking away the title of thief. But where did this strange term come from? It appeared in the 30s when the Soviet government decided to fight against the criminal element. The new state was shocked by the existence of thieves and mafias. It seemed unbelievable that in the country of Soviets, where everyone supposedly had equal rights, there were people who robbed and killed. There were indeed criminals, but the state was not going to deal with them. Instead, the thieves were encouraged to form their own criminal government, which would be completely independent of the state. They were promised certain privileges and protection. That's how the thieves-in-law appeared. This title was proof that a person belonged to the criminal world. It gave him certain privileges and benefits. A thief could demand protection and respect from his own kind. This continued until the 1970s. The thief-in-law was a member of the criminal government, a kind of minister in the underworld. The thief did not have to pay taxes to the state, but he had to pay tribute to his own government. The money went to maintain the criminal world. The government financed shelters and hospitals for criminals. They were even paid for funerals. At the same time, the criminal world was obliged to help its own. For example, to bury a thief who died on the run. This was a sign of respect. Also, the thief-in-law was exempt from paying for medicines. He could go to any pharmacy in the country and get treatment for free. However, the thieves-in-law did not enjoy the full protection of the criminal world. For example, if a thief decided to go into business with the government, he would be subjected to decrowning. And now let's talk about what this process looked like. First of all, the thief was summoned to a gathering of thieves. This happened secretly, and no one knew about it until after it was over. The meeting was attended by experienced thieves who made decisions about the fate of the accused. They listened to the charges against him and asked him questions. The gathering could go on for several days. It ended with the thief either being cleared or stripped of his title. If the thief was found guilty, they announced a war against him. This was the second method of decrowning. It involved dozens of criminals. The thief-in-law was beaten, humiliated, and tortured in every possible way. After that, they tried to force the rest of the thieves to reject him. But if they didn't succeed, the accused thief was placed in a special block in prison. This was the third method of decrowning. It was called the bitch's war. The name comes from the word bitch, which in the criminal world meant traitors. The prisoners in these blocks were disliked by both the administration and the thieves. They were often the victims of violence. The special blocks were created by the government. The inmates were transferred there from different prisons. The goal was to unite all the thieves who had fallen out of favor. Later, these prisoners were used to destroy the thieves in law. At the same time, the government separated the thieves from the other prisoners. They made sure that the thieves could not communicate with anyone else. The prisoners were kept in complete isolation. They could not receive letters or parcels. They were served food through a hatch in the door. If a prisoner was able to stand it for a few weeks, he was sent to a regular prison. But if he couldn't, he was sent to a punishment cell. The fourth method of decrowning was isolation. A thief-in-law could be placed in solitary confinement for a whole year or more. In this case, the prisoner would spend most of his time in a tiny cell, sometimes no bigger than 3 by 3 meters. The walls were bare and there was no furniture. The bed was a narrow shelf in the corner. Food was brought twice a day, breakfast and dinner. The water was turned off at night. The thief could only take a shower once a week. Every 2 weeks, the toilet in the cell was replaced with a bucket. The toilet had to be removed before visitors arrived. This method of decrowning was considered the most effective. It completely destroyed the psyche of the prisoners. They forgot what day it was and how they ended up in that cell. The fifth method of decrowning was the most unusual one. It was called social exclusion. A thief-in-law could be stripped of his title if he started a family, got married, got a job, or cooperated with the police. If a thief was charged with rape or murder, he could be killed. The corpse would be thrown to the police and a note would be attached saying that the thieves had judged him guilty and executed him. This was the last warning to other criminals. By the mid-1980s, most thieves-in-law were dead, decrowned, or isolated. The USSR had struck at the very heart of the criminal elite. When the USSR collapsed, a new criminal government arose in Russia. Its rules were based on the traditions of the past, but it was much more sophisticated. That's all for today. See you later.